Alright guys, fans have been hyping up this movie a lot. The expectations are set really high, so let's just get right into it. Here's my review for the 2018 sequel slash reboot, Halloween. To start this off, I'm just going to give you my personal quick history for the franchise. I watched the original one a few months ago, actually, and it didn't really do it for me. Michael Myers was definitely scary back then, and I loved the pacing of the film, and the kills were pretty cool, but I don't know what it was. It just didn't do it for me. It was bland. It was boring. Some of the camera work for back then was definitely revolutionary and ahead of its time, but it just didn't really stand out. The only other Halloween movie I saw was Rob Zombie's reboot, and just like the original, it didn't really stand out. I do prefer the original to Rob Zombie's, but Michael Myers, they just never made his character interesting. Other slashers like Jason Voorhees and Freddy Krueger were just so much more intriguing to me. Those were the only two films I saw in the franchise, so going into this, I wasn't expecting much. So the short and simple plot of this one is 40 years after the original film's ending, this movie takes place in 2018. Two journalists go to the sanatorium Michael Myers is locked up in to get an interview out of him, to just break him, to get a word out of him. Failing to do so, they still want to continue their obsession with this case, so they go to the only other person involved in the Haddonfield murders, Laurie Strode. Shortly after, within 40 years, no one's really got any information or furthered the case at all as to why Michael Myers did those things years ago. So the government kind of let back and just decided to move him to a different sanitarium. But while en route, the truck crashes, so now Michael Myers is free to pick up exactly where he left off 40 years ago. As I said earlier, I was reluctant to see this film, but I'm glad I did. I'm definitely a Michael Myers fan now. This movie just revitalized the franchise and brought it back to what it should be. So let's kick it off with the cast. We're introduced to a very different Laurie Strode than we saw in the original film. This one basically has a PTSD of sorts, and she's been kind of preparing for 40 years for Michael Myers to finally make his return. Her family really doesn't want to see her anymore. They think she's ridiculous, that she needs help. She was definitely my favorite character of this film. Obviously, next we have to talk about Michael Myers. Nick Castle from the original film returns to play him again for a little bit, but they actually got a younger actor to portray him for all the action scenes and stuff like that. They did a similar thing with Chewbacca in Star Wars The Force Awakens with Peter Mayhew and another younger actor. If you weren't scared of him in the original films, this one's definitely going to do it for you. A lot of his kills were brutal, they were intense, and some scenes with him weren't even just jump scares. He was just maybe standing in the background, and after a few shots I'm like, oh shit, he's back there. I always appreciate when directors can do that. If you can be creepy without jump scares and just have something in the background, that takes us back to when any person was a kid and they were just looking in their bedroom in the middle of the night or maybe outside and they thought they saw something. Judy Greer's in this film, or as I like to call her, the woman who plays the mom in everything. She plays Laurie Strode's daughter, and after 40 years of her mom just having all these ridiculous PTSD moments and stuff, she's tired of it. She wants to get away with it. She wants to put that in the past and have her mom forget, because growing up with her was not an easy situation. But just like other films, she doesn't really stand out in this. It's not like she was a bad character or anything, but she only really had one or two moments that stood out to me. So without spoiling anything, I'm just gonna say this. You guys got to keep an eye out for this kid, because he was probably one of my favorite parts of this film. This movie exceeded my expectations. I wasn't really looking forward to this because obviously, like I said before, I'm not a big Halloween fan. The biggest thing I didn't expect out of this film is how many different character arcs were going on and how well they meshed together. Similar to Dr. Loomis from the original movie, there's a new doctor called Dr. Sartain, and he's basically following around Michael Myers because he's obsessed with him. He wants to know how he thinks. He wants to know more. And then you have Laurie Strode's granddaughter. Unlike her mom, she really understands where her grandmother's coming from, and even after 40 years, she can tell what she's going through is really traumatic. So the only character arc I really didn't like was Laurie Strode's granddaughter, Vicky, has a boyfriend in this film. Now, I'm not going to reveal too much of what happens with that, but I'm just going to say this. You can see what's going to happen from a mile away, and actually, I just saw Goosebumps 2 last week, and they did the exact same thing in the exact same setting. There's actually a decent amount of comedy in this film, but it does it in a way where it's not cheesy at all and doesn't take away from the horrific tone of this film. I can say maybe the only part that really took me out of it was in the third act. Two guys are talking about what they packed for dinner, and I'm just like, okay, whatever. And it goes on, 20 seconds goes by, 40 seconds goes. This goes on for almost 2 minutes. The scene was just completely unnecessary at the specific time and just took the viewer out of that horrific, intense tone of the film. One thing that is questionable in this film is we don't really know if Michael Myers is a supernatural force or just a guy, because Certain scenes, he's just completely overpowering someone. He might completely like bash a head in or something like that with his own just brute strength. But then again, at another point in the film, he might have an encounter with someone and they're able to just push him around, shove him around like he's a normal human being. Maybe they'll explore that in a possible sequel, but hey, if the director just wants to make him brutal for the sake of being brutal and have him encounter someone normally just to humanize the character, I'll take it. One thing I don't understand is this movie was called Halloween. The original one's called Halloween. This one is supposed to be a sequel to the original film, so you would think they would name it like something like Halloween Retribution or some sort of subtitle like that. But then again, I guess if you put a subtitle to this film, people might associate it with the previous ones. I guess I can understand them naming this Halloween just to be a soft reboot to all of the other crappy Halloween sequels out there that didn't do well. Since this movie was so good, I guess they just wanted to let viewers know that this is the direction they want to take the franchise. Lastly, I just want to talk about the setting in this film. The town in this movie just seems like the town time forgot. A lot of the stuff in this film is older technology that they're using. Yes, it does take place in modern day, but they're not focused on modern technology. It's not everywhere. They're not using it all the time. I really appreciated that because in general, this just feels like a sequel to a 1970s film. It's not like Michael Myers is using any of this technology to his advantage. He's been a sanitarium for the past 40 years. Laurie Strode has kind of secluded herself and turned her house into an armory and preparing for Michael to come back. So modern technology is the last thing these characters worry about. And don't worry, there's a variety of different kills in this film. There's quick kills, slow kills, people struggling. They really do a great job of just never making Michael Myers' kills stale. In the end, I had a great time with this film. It really kind of revamped the character to me personally, and now I'm really invested in this franchise. If they do make a sequel, I'm definitely going to check it out. The kills were brutal, the cast did an overall great job, and just the tone of this film was fantastic and so well done. Fans of the original film will love this. It's a true sequel in the Halloween franchise, so guys, check this out. 8.5 out of 10.